Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Between the Lines. My name is John Lofton here. We are going to have ourselves a great day here. It is Father's Day. To all the dads out there, happy Father's Day to you. Oh my goodness, what a day. What a day. Always a good day. Except here in Iowa right now, it's storming outside, so we just got put into a severe thunderstorm watch here. They're expecting some hail and large winds, so hopefully it won't interrupt the show today, but you know what? With all the technical stuff we have going on around here, you guys notice the countdown timer didn't show up? It shows up before I go live, and then when I go live, it doesn't show. Go figure. Anyway, so I was kind of guessing. I was like, hey, I don't know when we're going to go, but it's all good. So anyway, my name is John Lofton here. I want to welcome you. And as you can see in the lower right-hand corner, we have a new phone number. This actually goes to Lofton Space, which is our main company, if you will. But I didn't really want to buy two different phone numbers. However, it does go to a automated thing that lets you select, 1, 2, 3. You're going to want to select option 3 if you'd like to share your thoughts on the show and be live with me. Raven is in the studio, my lovely producer, and she'll be taking those calls and screening them. And then if we have a good thought here, she's going to patch that over to me and we'll get you live on the air during the show. How's that sound? You can always Facebook message us. You can write in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe on the video. That really helps us out. We're brand new on here on the YouTube side of things with the Between the Lines episodes, and the website's all getting built. You can watch us, of course, now on btllive.com. The site is barely functioning right now. You get the YouTube thing, and that's about it. But it will have a lot more information, including media outreach and sponsorship opportunities, as well as other advertisements. So feel free to check that out here once we get that up and running. Be checking back daily. It's always going to be a good thing here. This show, I have a good feeling, the more we do it, the thing with YouTube is you just got to be consistent, even if it's kind of, ugly at first, your shows aren't quite polished the way you'd like them to be. You keep publishing and eventually you're going to find your niche. The YouTube algorithm kind of says, hey, he typically posts stuff about this or this or this, and this is kind of the format. These are the people we think his show would be good for. And it kind of just does it on its own arbitrarily. But when you like and subscribe, that actually tells YouTube, like, hey, match this content with the other stuff that I like, and then, show me more stuff like it. And so, and then other people like you, because, frankly, Google and all that, they know everything about you. Probably, they know more about you than your spouse does. Sad to say, but I guarantee they do. But anyway, so, but today's show is all about being a good father and what are some common traits about being a good father. And I'm going to share the story about, when our first son was born, and it was a really tough situation. And I'm going to get into that here in just a little bit. But like I said, I want to thank all the dads out there for being good dads, especially if you're a Christian father. It's a big responsibility. And I think when you understand if from a Christian faith, you kind of get that whole weight of what it means to actually be a good father, and what those expectations are. Sometimes I think in our society, what a good father is kind of gets jumbled up in some of those, I guess, leadership and, I guess the role model side of things of how you should raise your kid and what the family structure should look like, and those sort of things sometimes get a little bit jumbled up. All right, so we're going to go ahead and dive in today's show here. And but like I said, feel free to give us a call. Again, that number is 866-990-4554, option 1. And that'll get you through to us, and we'd love to have you on air today with us today. All right, so here's how I became a father. And by the way, you notice the bear back here? It's actually automated. I can't play it because it plays Rodney Atkins, I've been watching you. And my last two videos, even though should have been fine, have copyright strikes on them. So I'm not even going to attempt fate here and play it for you. But it kind of, the arm moves, although in my opinion, it looks like it's dislocated. He's like kind of flailing around, and it just looks like he dislocated it. I'm like, that doesn't look right. But then I got a couple nice letters, one from my wife and one from Junior. So we have this thing when my kid goes to bed at night, and I'll always say, I love you, Buckaroo. And then he replies, like right on cue, I love you, Daddy Roo. He calls me Daddy Roo. So it says, I love you, Daddy Roo, on his little letter. And of course, my wife wrote me a nice letter too. just thanking me and having that role in our lives and having that family structure that we do. So that's kind of how I'm gonna start this whole thing out. How did the family dynamic that we have today come to be? Well, our son is 4 years old now, and he's our only son. And so he was born on April 18th, 2017. And he was born actually at 35 weeks, so a little bit premature. Um, and that was mainly because my wife developed preeclampsia, and also she wasn't very well dilating. And so they kind of got her in, and they did a bunch of scans and everything and tests and all that, and she just wasn't dilating, but yet her blood pressure was just skyrocketing. Yeah, so she developed what's called preeclampsia, and many of you guys probably know what that is and heard of it. And it was basically putting her life and the baby's life at danger at the exact same time. So if they didn't intervene and do a C-section, there was a high likelihood that one of them, could have some serious complications or even death. And so obviously we didn't want that, so we elected to have it. So they had people come in from, we were in Newton, and they had people come in from Des Moines, Iowa, and that's about a 40-minute drive. But they had specialists come in all the way from there because this surgery had to be done at Newton. And so what's interesting is our son was actually born in Newton, Iowa, but didn't even spend a couple hours there before they got him stable, and they actually had to transport him by ambulance over to the NICU down in Des Moines, and he spent about 2 weeks there. And so here's how kind of that came to be. When we found out, that Raven was having a baby, and I was going to be a dad and all that, I gotta admit, my first thought was, no, this can't be real. Like, we kind of were trying, but it wasn't I wouldn't say we were super excited, but we knew, like, hey, if we're doing this, this could happen. And we kind of knew that with my kidneys getting worse at the time, it was already starting to show. And the thing about kidney failure is sometimes it leads to low libido and low testosterone, stuff like that. And so we were worried that, if we didn't have a baby, then we may not be able to have a baby of our own in the future. So we made the decision we'd start kind of trying. But it wasn't certainly planned, and we weren't doing anything special, really, I guess. Well, that's because it's kind of gross and into a hole I don't want to go into. But anyway, when we found out, we had the regular check, and then basically then she went into the doctor, and they did another test and confirmed that, yep, she indeed was pregnant. And then at 20 weeks, we found out, it was a boy. But the whole time, what was happening, though, actually was, because I have Alport syndrome, which is a genetic disease that can be passed down, and mine's autosomal dominant, and so that means the dad can pass it down on the Y chromosome. A lot of Alport syndrome patients have it on the X, so they get it from their mom. And boys seem to have a worse effect with it than others. And a lot of patients, it causes deafness. And I've talked more about that in some of my previous videos. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I encourage you to go watch some of the videos. And even on the Loft in Space channel on YouTube, you're welcome to go over there and check some of those out. And it kind of further explains, kind of what our whole thing is. But we knew that he could have some complications even early on. And one of the things that both my dad and I had was cataracts at birth, and we're already thinking about that. And but they kept pushing these genetic testing, and I would call them more invasive kind of procedures, basically sticking a big needle all the way down to the baby to try to get a sample, so they can go and do tissue samples. And we were adamantly opposed to doing that. They asked us probably 3 or 4 times during the pregnancy if we wanted to pursue anything, or if we'd even be interested in talking to a genetic counselor. And every time we said no, because here's why. We knew even if our child would be born with the same genetic condition that I have and my dad had, that who better parents to have than parents who've already been through it and already know how to deal with it. And I've talked about this too in some of my videos too. But that was kind of our mindset. It didn't matter. We firmly believe that God doesn't need our help in the development of our child. We certainly aren't personal fans of IVR. I know that there are families that don't have a choice, but they still want to be a family. I'm not necessarily opposed, but I will say if you can do it a more natural way, more traditional way, I would say that you're always better off. It's going to be, I guess, just more natural, if you will. But I'm not here to judge anybody for IVR type stuff. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what was happening. So the day of, or what I didn't know would be the day of, I went to work as normal, and my wife was home in the morning, and her water broke. She didn't really realize it broke at the time, quite, if I'm correct. But yeah, it broke, and she called the docs. They have her come in, and I didn't know much about this at the time because I was at work. And that particular day, I was doing technical support, and I was a network operations technician for an ISP company. And I had about 7 tickets on my desk, and that's kind of a lot. It was one of a heavier day for us. And so I was trying to work through these tickets and get them knocked out. And it was a Friday too, so that always adds to the stress because you really need to get these tickets done. Because I don't work on the weekends, and if I don't get them done, then this customer would have to wait until Monday, to get some of these issues resolved possibly, or a weekend person would have to take over the ticket anyway. So I really want to get it all done, and I get a call from her during one of my breaks, and she's like, "I'm at the hospital. They're doing tests. We don't know." And then I let her go, and then a few minutes later, she calls back like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to have this baby today." And I guess I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Can I go right now with all these tickets?" And I went up to my boss, and I'm like, "I got 7 tickets, but my wife, she's having a baby." And I'm like, "Can I please go?" And they're like, "Yeah, just go." So I called it out to my coworkers. I wrote them down all the ticket numbers. They're like, "Sure, fine." And I'm sure they were just as swamped as I was. We all had tickets, crazy that day. But they were so cool and helped out. And I remember going to the hospital, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what this procedure was going to be like. When I got there, they quickly got me back. They got me gowned up. There's this jumpsuit thing that they have you wear, so you don't have to take off your clothes, but you're still sanitary enough to go into an OR. Because I was actually allowed to be in the OR while our son was, coming out in the C-section. And that day as a man, I learned a lot about a woman's anatomy. Let me just tell you right now, I learned a lot. And that's those are images I can't get out of my head, how much I try. But I tell you what, it is actually kind of beautiful in a way, because you realize that coming out of this opening is a child who's been living inside of there, about to take their first actual breath of air, because as we all know, babies do practice breathing. But in our son's case, he was born a little premature, and his lungs weren't quite developed. And it took a minute, but they got him to cry. But he had his chest was being sucked in. It was just these retractions, if you will. And it was just gut wrenching. You could see that this new baby was just struggling just to breathe. It didn't have a choice. It barely even knew how to breathe, because of how little he was. And yet he's really struggling. So they get oxygen in him, and they're getting ready to, I knew he'd need to be intubated. I knew it, but they couldn't. I don't think they had the materials at the time to do it. They just tried to get him oxygen. They were trying to get him stable enough. They had paramedics there. They had people from Des Moines there, and everything. And here's the thing. So right after our son's born in the OR, I wanted to kind of be with my wife, but I also now had to be with our son. And that was the first, and I'm getting to the whole father, good traits and all that, but you got to understand. These are instant. It's not you planned exactly how this delivery was going to go. We all hoped it would be natural, or just not a C-section. And so you go from your wife being your one and only priority to now having 2 priorities that in your heart and mind are exactly equal to each other. How do you pick to only be with one of them at the same time. And so for a little bit, they actually needed signatures. And you have to understand, my wife had an epidural. She's still cut open. They're trying to put her back together. And they had her arms like kind of stretched out. Like there was no way she was signing anything, obviously. And so I'm there and they're like, we need your permission, this, and this, so we can treat him. Because now he's a living patient, right? And so as a guardian, you have to give consent for treatment. And I'm just like, okay. I had no idea what I was signing. I mean, I could have been signing my birthright away or for something. I didn't care. I just knew he needed help. He needed help right then and there. And then they quickly whisked me away with him up to a room where paramedics and the nurses and doctors were working with him for probably a couple hours just to get him stable. Like, but this entire time, this baby is just like struggling to breathe and like just the severe chest. I mean, his color looked terrible. I mean, he was like blue and almost purple. Just no color, no redness or pinkness about him. I mean, this kid looked sick. Like, I'm not a doctor, and I could tell that our kid looked sick. And I was sick. and I'm sure Raven was too. But she had no clue about what was going on. This was all on me to decide for our son how to care for him in an instant. This is our first son, mind you. First time I've ever experienced a childbirth delivery of any kind. And you're just thrown into it, and you're in this like emergency situation. And I remember, like, I couldn't touch him. They put him up. Right before they whisked him away, they did give Raven like a few seconds to see him and to have him next to her just for a second. And then they had to pull him away. And we didn't even get to hold him for a week because he was either hooked up to a ventilator or just too fragile to hold. I mean, even doing things like diaper changes and stuff, the nurses and all that would do that because all the stuff he had coming out. But I'll get to that in a little bit, what that hospital stay was like. And so going back again to when we're in the room and they're just trying to get him stable. I'm calling people because I knew my dad wanted to know. I knew there was some other people that wanted to know. And I just, I knew that this had to be done, that this is what was going on, and I was just stressed. And then what happened later that day is, they were getting ready to take him. They got him stable enough where they felt comfortable with an ambulance ride, and of course I had to sign off. And the thing is at that moment, I had to decide, was I going to stay at Newton and help my wife when she came into the room, because it was still a while before she came up, and if I'm correct, he was already gone. Like, she never saw him again after the OR until we were already at Mercy in Des Moines. And so that's kind of my, like, that day anyway. And so I had to decide, though, as they were taking him, am I going to stay with Raven or am I going to go with the baby? And I had this realization at the moment, like, because they're both important. They're like my number one focus, but I thought, who can I do more help with? How much could I help our son in that moment versus how much could I help my wife with? And my thought process was, well, one, I can't do anything for this baby. They won't even let me touch him. Like, literally, I could not touch him physically. Even to stroke his head or anything like that. I couldn't touch him. They would not let me. And I got to see him. I took photos, but that was it. And I knew there wasn't anything that I could do for him in Des Moines. It wasn't going to do me any good. But I figured, if Raven came back to the room, I could get her water, I could help her with her pillows or bed, and all that. I could get clothes out, I could help her just do whatever. There were things that I could do for her, whereas I couldn't do anything. I just had to trust these doctors and nurses and paramedics that they were going to be able to take care of him, since I wasn't in a position to take care of him at the time, or there really wasn't anything. But, I knew then that meant I probably wasn't going to find out how he was doing. So later on, after I saw Raven, I left the hospital because I needed to go get some food, but I decided I was going to go to Des Moines and at least see him. I wasn't going to stay there, but I was going to at least go down and see him and figure out where he was and all of that. And so I remember stopping at a Perkins, and I remember, just calling a good friend of mine and having him there, and just trying to decompress because I needed to. I had to clear my mind. And I think that as a father now, I can look back and say that was the first time in my life I ever realized what a situation was like that and had to make a decision and then be able to take a step away from it and make sure my mind was clear and that my emotions were sound in order to best care for both of them, really. So I took that time at Perkins and I just decompressed. And then I went on to the hospital, and I got in there and the doctor was still in the room, and I asked him, I said, how is he? And, is he going to be okay? And the doctor was very blunt with me. He's like, I'm not sure he'll make it through the night. I don't know. He's pretty sick, is basically what he said. He's really sick. He had pneumonia, and, he was on a ventilator, and his lungs were underdeveloped, and it just did not look good. And so my heart sank, here's this new baby, and they're not even sure he'll make it through the night. And oh my gosh. It's like if you knew someone all your life and then you found out that they're terminally ill and there's nothing you can do for them, kind of thing, that kind of feeling, except you have that exact same emotion with a baby that you've only seen, you haven't even touched, but it's your child. There is a connection that is made at birth the second that child comes out, and even before. But I think for women, it even happens once they start feeling the baby moving around. I could be wrong. Maybe I don't know. I'm not a woman, so I don't know. But for me as a father, I felt like the first time I looked at him, and I knew that there was more than just something moving around in my wife's belly. That was the moment for me when that connection went from, okay, I know I'm going to be a dad, I'm trying to prepare, this sort of thing. I was concerned, to, holy cow, this kid's life's in my hands right now. That was the moment that happened, and I kind of lost it. I was crying, and I really didn't know how to deal with it. But then I also knew that I had to go back to Newton, and I really was scared how much of the info I was going to tell Raven, because she can't go to Des Moines like I could. She had to be in the hospital. She was still sick herself. Her blood pressure took a while to come down. They had to give her certain medications just to keep her blood pressure from going over 200 over, I can't remember what it was, 200 over 120 or something like that. It was crazy high, high enough where they put pads around her in case she had a seizure bad. And so that would have been concerning. And I did have the thought, what if I lost both of them? What if they were both gone? And they didn't survive this? And I just, that thought, even now thinking about it, just absolutely is soul crushing. It would be the most devastating thing I think a father could ever experience, to have to lose their wife and child at the same time. But that thought crossed my mind. I'm not even gonna lie. I mean, it was that bad. But thankfully, as you guys can tell, a week pretty much on a ventilator, and then the following week we actually got to hold him in the hospital, and 2 weeks later, on May 4th, he got to come home. And we were so thankful. And I'll remember May 4th because everybody always knows May the 4th be with you. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so, but I'll always remember the day because of that. Because the other thing is, he had this when we first got there. I saw this over his like incubator bed. Because they do this for a lot of new babies, is that he had a Star Wars blanket above him, and he still has that blanket, by the way. He still has it to this day. We always kind of keep it away. We don't usually get it out too much just because we want it to kind of last. But yeah, he still has that Star Wars blanket, and oddly enough, he comes home on May 4th. So I'm not sure what that says, but hey, that's the way it happened for us. But yeah, and as the years have gone by now, and he did have cataracts, I should add. He had cataracts at birth, and so by the time he was 3 months, he already had 2 surgeries. And actually, the first surgery, he didn't want to wake up, and they had to put him back on a ventilator for a day. And so that was just crazy. And there is something even gut-wrenching about when they take a ventilator out of a baby and they try to cry, and it sounds like this like crackly, wheezy kind of sound, and it just hurts you. It crushes you. It almost sounds like they're in pain. Like it's not something I hope many people have to go through, but sadly I know a lot of people have. But anyways, but we got past that, and I would have to say, after his cataract surgeries, after he was 3 months old, those first 3 months were absolute hell. I can't even sugarcoat it. They were hell. Up all night. You've got in between surgeries, you've got all these special things you're doing because he was a preemie, and it was overwhelming. And it takes a while. Your first kid, I know for me, it took a while to get used to all the crying, all of it, because he did have colic. Oh, all of it. And I'm glad those days are over now, but looking back, I mean, I'm glad I made it through it. I'm glad we made it through it. You know, my wife, a week later, they finally got her blood pressure under control, where she was able to be discharged, and she was able to come and spend all the time that she wanted with him. And that really felt good. And so, you know, I got to tell you guys that's what's crushing. And now we're 4 years into this, and I'm not going to say I got the father thing down, because I know it changes. Like, if you're a dad, you probably know this. Like, there's different phases that your kid goes through. And as a father, your mentality and your leadership will change as they get older. Like, now I can ask my kid to do something, and I know whether or not he's capable of doing it. Like, he knows how to get himself dressed now. He knows how to get his shoes on by himself now. We're still working on potty training, oddly enough, but I'm told that a lot of boys, even at 4, kind of struggle with this, and that it'll just click. I hope so, because we've been trying for 2 years on that, and it's just, you lose a lot of your, I don't know, will power in it of trying to get your kid to do it. Anyway, so those are just some of the struggles, but you know, I really can't complain. You know, from a kid that a doctor flat out said they didn't even know that if they would make it through the night, to a very active, very vibrant, and a child that can see better than I can. I'm happy. He does have a nephrologist, and we still have to do kidney stuff because it's still possible he has Alport syndrome just like I do. We got his insurance to pay for a $10,000 genetic test just to have it come back inconclusive. I know, right? How does it come back inconclusive? Anyway, well, yeah. So they didn't find the general markers for it, but they found some other genetic abnormalities, and so they weren't able to completely rule it out. But yeah, but if he does decrease, you know, we'll do a biopsy, because that's how I was diagnosed with Alport syndrome, is by kidney biopsy and not by genetics. So, but we know that because it passed from male to male, that it has to be autosomal dominant. Anyway. So going on now to today's message, and I spent a lot of time, so I apologize if today's episode, I'll ask, actually, Raven, how much time do I got left in the show? Oh, I'm already over? Oh, I guess. Well, I did get, no, because I started a little bit late. I think I got like 4 minutes, technically. But anyway, and by the way, you guys don't know this, but she can talk in my ear without you guys hearing her. It's kind of cool now. We have like a little talkback system. But anyway, yeah. So going forward now, I would say for dads, here's the moral of all this. And I really hoping I'd spend more time on this than I'm able to now. I hope you guys appreciated that story, because I hope as dads you remember what it was like being a dad for the first time, and you remember how much you loved your kid the first time you saw them, and how much that still means to you. I think that those are common traits. Now, I'm sorry to say this, but there are lousy dads in this world. There really are. I mean, no dad is perfect. I certainly am not. And I'm not going to put myself, my own family, or anybody else on a pedestal who I've looked up to as role models. And I certainly don't want to put anybody else in the dirt. But you see it on the news. That's why guys go to jail for child abuse. You know, I was just watching a story where, granted, it wasn't the kid's father, but it was somebody who should have known better. Basically punched a kid's head hard enough, a 1-year-old, and the kid died. Literally. And then he handed the baby back to the mother like nothing happened. And the baby was already dead. Yeah, I was sick when I heard that. And I thought, how? How could you? What moral fiber said that I'm going to hit a 1-year-old was in your head? So yes, there are lousy dads out there. Complete, utter garbage people of a father. And that's just the fact of it. Because somewhere along the line, that instinct of, this is your future generation. This represents you, and this is your chance to do something good. This is your chance to help raise a child that's going to grow up and hopefully make a difference in this world. And you're not setting at all an example if you think that that's the case. Now, do we discipline our child? Absolutely. But we're not at it to hurt him or do anything that would, psychologically hurt him or anything like that. We just, we kind of grew up with tough parents ourselves. And I think, to be honest with you, tough parents, that, I think that helps make for better kids in a lot of cases. And when I say tough, I'm not saying abusive tough. Or even mentally, psychologically tough. Those type of parents are just super intense all the time. But tough as in, they set the expectations for their kids. Like, for example, let's say our kid doesn't eat dinner, that we put in front of him that night. I'm sorry to say this, but your kid's not going to die from missing a meal. They learn to eat what you put in front of them, and they need to learn to be grateful. Now, we would never starve our kid, but we would definitely make sure he knew that there isn't any other option for dinner. You're going to eat this, which is perfectly fine. We demonstrate to him that, hey, look, mom and dad eat this. You're not going to die from it. You may not like the taste all that much, but there's other nights, what? I'm sure you enjoy everything. We can't have chicken tenders every night for dinner. It just doesn't work that way. You got to learn how to eat a salad. We even put spinach in it, which, as you know, spinach doesn't even have much of a taste. And sometimes we'll mix it in with other things. We're thankful that he likes like mixed vegetables, carrots and peas and stuff like that. But, those are just an example of what I mean by tough, but not like abusive tough. Because you have to remember, dads, your job is to raise them. I mean, some parents try to be friends with their kids, and I don't think a friendship type mentality works until they're older. I can look at my own dad right now and be like, hey, yeah, we're basically friends, if you will. Because I've reached a maturity level that is, on par with his. But as a kid, when you're still learning critical life lessons, having a parent that's too, I would say just too lenient and just wants their kid to be happy all the time. The point of being a parent isn't to make your kid happy all the time. The point of a parent is to show them life values and show them why education, food, diet, exercise, and just how to be, how to learn to love God, for us, and what that means, why, we're inherently born, with sin, and what we have to do to get some grace and salvation from it. And that's my job as a parent. And then the way I do that is through leadership. So common traits of good fathers are knowing how to lead your family. And this includes being able to be a leader and a rock for your wife. This includes being that role model for your son. This includes, how do you treat others? Are you active? Like, we're very active in our church. Our son knows, every Sunday I'm up in the booth doing something technical. Our son knows that I have to get up at 3 a.m. to be at work, way before he even thinks about getting up. He knows all those things. And I got to believe that it's making an impression on him that you got to work hard. You're going to have tough times and you're going to have to deal with it. We try not to coddle our kids or anything like that too much. Sometimes you kind of have to, just to give them a little bit of an extra boost. But at the same time, I think for a lot of fathers would agree that it's all about the bigger picture. If you take an isolated incident and it goes away, it's not the end of the world. But if you're not consistent in what your expectations are for your family, then that's how relationships kind of go awry. And some of that is making time for your spouse, and making time to do things with her, making time to do things as a family, even though schedules are really hard and crazy. And I know today's episode went way over. I apologize. But I really hope that it helped you guys out a lot. And so if you have any questions at all, drop them down in the comments. I had a whole lot more I was planning on to say about this subject, but I should probably wrap it up here pretty quick. But yeah, I guess if you guys do have a thought, you feel free, even when we're not online, you can always drop us a voicemail. You can give that number a call, 866-920. Excuse me, I can't read my own number. 866-990. I'm still learning. It's actually a brand new number, so I haven't memorized it in my head yet. 866-990-4554 and select option 1, and that'll get you over to, actually it's Raven's voicemail, but she's the one who always takes those calls, but I'm sure she's really happy to relay them on to me, and we can get them on the air. Always like, subscribe, and comment on the videos. And tell me, what are some of your guys' best experiences about fatherhood? Like, what are some of the struggles that you guys have had, and what leadership characteristics, that may be different than mine? And if you don't like something I said, feel free. As long as it's constructive criticism, I'm happy to read it, because I think as dads, we can learn off each other. Every kid is different. I've known what works for my kid, but it's not going to work for every kid. And you need to understand that you need to make time for your kids to learn their interests, to learn kind of where their skill sets are naturally developing. And then I think as a father, you help foster those skill sets. If Junior ever comes in here and looks at the mixer behind me, he'll ask me, what does this button do? What's this one do? Because some of them blink, and he's still little enough where he likes blinking lights. But yeah, he'll ask, and I try to do my best to make time to answer the questions. So maybe he'll be an audio engineer one day. I don't know. But anyway, but I am going to wrap this whole thing up. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. And of course, as always, we're going to see you guys next week, 4 p.m. Central, right here on Between the Lines. BTLlive.com is a good place to always make sure you're up to date on the latest YouTube content. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.